the Daily Fantasy Edge. I'm Peter Jennings, of course, go by CSU Ram 88 across the daily fantasy industry. And as always, joined by Al Zeidenfeld and Adam Levitan. Al, you took down the four-man. I got second place, which I'm very proud of. That's how bad the season is going. I finally beat Levitan. So, Levitan, since you've thrown me under the bus over and over and over again, how does it feel to get DFL, bud?
I mean, how do you not play Robbie Anderson and still get second? It makes no sense. I don't even know how does that even happen. It's not fair.
I had a good score.
I know.
One winning week. Blind squirrel catches a nut every once in a while.
I know. No, it doesn't feel good to get DFL. I mean, lineup was atrocious. Talked about it on the solo pod, and we moved forward. But the good news is, Peter, that this is my week, man. This is the week of the year for me. This is an information-based slate. There's so much information to digest, and it's a 15-game slate. I think a lot of people are going to be overwhelmed, but I mean, just in terms of information, we have teams possibly resting guys. We have records players are chasing. We have nicked up guys on dead teams, may or may not play. We have teams in evaluation mode. Like, there's just so much information to digest beyond the normal matchup stuff. Like, it's so good. I think hard work will hopefully be rewarded on this slate in terms of information. So I feel good about that.
Yeah. Have to check out his great article that you wrote on the DK playbook. Al, you had the nuts last week. You're feeling good. How's the zombie killing going?
Zombie killing's going good, as we were talking about offline before we started recording this podcast. We are 100% a lock to get Adam downloading Fortnite and playing with us one night. We're going to have to escort the VIP across the map. We'll all put on the John Wick skin. We'll give ourselves different nicknames. You know, Ocelot. This is Ocelot. We're coming into Blind Squirrel. Blind Squirrel, do you have the package? Yes, I have the package. We are shuttling him through the gorge. We are going through the divot. We are getting him to the finish line. We are going to get Adam Levitan through a game of Fortnite. We're going to get him all the way to the end and get a victory royale. I don't know when it's going to happen. If I have to fly to Philly and download the damn game on his computer myself, I will make it happen.
Here's what I want to play. I want you to sign a disclaimer that says, if I download all this garbage zombie killing crap and it ruins my computer, you're buying me a new computer. Hashtag how rich, hashtag Smith's life. That's all I want.
Okay. If downloading the one game to your computer, the free game to your computer, crashes your computer within 7 days, I will buy you a new computer.
Okay. We have a deal.
But we're going to have to get an uninvolved, unbiased third party to make sure that it's not from some other crazy stuff that you download, Adam, because that's not my fault. Because you've said all you have is the internet, and the internet's a dark and scary place.
Besides the bestiality, I have nothing on my computer.
All right. Time to get into the games. We have 15 games. Adam has a ton of news and notes, given it's an information slate. So let's dive right in. We have the Dolphins at Bills. Adam, it might be the week that I finally dip my toe into the Josh Allen waters, who's been incredible. I think he's certainly in consideration this week.
Oh, I mean, Josh Allen's just the man. I mean, so wildly inaccurate, so mistake prone, but leads the entire league in ADOT and just plays. My friend Jam has talked about plays like he's playing in the backyard, and that's kind of how the offense has been schemed, just wild, out of control, run with the football, throw it super deep, hope good things happen. From a news and notes perspective, obviously both these teams are completely dead. Xavier Howard, top cornerback for the Dolphins, likely to sit out, which is obviously an upgrade for Robert Foster, Australian for sex, who disappointed last week, and I hate saying this because I hate when people say this, but was really, really close to a couple bombs from Josh Allen. I think Foster's in play. Zay Jones remains only 4K, even though he continues to play on every snap and see a really high target share. And then on the other side of the ball, I'm not too interested in any Dolphins going up to Buffalo here, but I would note that Kenyon Drake just badly outsnapped Kalen Ballage last week. I know the touch count looked a little bit closer, but Kenyon Drake played on 80+% of the snaps. But it's a tough spot, obviously, for Miami. They've already said, there's already a report out there that Ryan Tannehill's not coming back next year. This couldn't be more of a dead man walking situation now.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense that in such a situation where they're probably going to clean house in the coaching staff, the front office, and on the field, that you would not give this guy a little bit of an extended run to get some tape on him to see how he can perform, to see what you have, right? So, yeah, Drake, I don't know what to do between Drake and Ballage this week, but getting back to the Buffalo wide receivers, they're going to be as highly variant as a Josh Allen pass goes. Now, the guy that's going to be his favorite target recently has been Isaiah McKenzie. He sits at 3,700. Foster priced way up to 5,100. I would assume that it should be different. I would assume that Foster should be the one who's cheaper, considering that he's got a greater floor to ceiling, and McKenzie is the guy who's more, what's his name, Enunwa, more Adam Humphries, a guy who's going to get 7 to 12 targets. And even on his low ADOT targets, Allen can throw it, 3 stories above his head and out of bounds. But, he's the one who has the higher floor to me, where Foster has the higher ceiling. It's strange to me that the higher ceiling guy with the lower floor is 1,400 more than the one who's been getting peppered with over 20% of Allen's targets the last 3 weeks.
Adam, you hate talking about those plays. I love it. I think it's actually somewhat predictive. I understand people getting frustrated with it. But yeah, Foster missed an 82-yard touchdown that he just lost the ball in the sun. You sharply got on him early 2 weeks ago, had a huge week because of Foster. I think it makes a lot of sense, like the McKenzie call. And you can run Josh Allen out there by himself, given his rushing upside. I don't have any plays on the Dolphins either. I think it's really thin. The Bills' defense, Adam, where do they rank for you?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Tannehill has been so low volume. I mean, the guy literally attempts like between 20 and 25 passes every week. That's my main concern. We obviously want a lot of dropbacks when we're playing a defense. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo's defense is very aggressive, and Ryan Tannehill in this offense is very bad. So we could certainly do worse. I think there's better plays, though.
Okay, let's move to the Falcons at Buccaneers. Adam, what are the news and notes?
Yeah, both these teams are actually dead as well. And I think that we're going to see some rest here. It's very possible that Julio Jones gets held out. It's very possible that Tevin Coleman gets held out. And kind of Tevin Coleman wrote up as a fade last week in leverage because I didn't think they would be willing to change his role. I thought Brian Hill would get roughly what Ito Smith was getting, and that's what happened. Now, I'm not sure what they're going to do if Tevin sits. I'm not sure even who they have behind Brian Hill, but Brian Hill would certainly at least be a consideration. If Julio sits, we'll see likely a lot of Calvin Ridley and Mo Sanu. Do expect Matt Ryan to play a full game here. But the biggest injury news in this game to me, Al, is Deshaun Jackson likely to miss this game with an ankle/heel issue. And I know people are sick of hearing about the god Chris Godwin. I get it. He had an awful game against the Saints, was targeted 10 times, caught 1 pass. He had an awful game against the Ravens. That was like the toughest possible matchup in the rain. If you don't want to go back to Chris Godwin, I understand. He's also 4,300, playing every snap at home in warm weather against the Falcons. Really talented guy and is seeing over 20% target share when Deshaun Jackson has been out, has had 300-yard games when Deshaun Jackson's been out. So I get it if you don't want to go back to Chris Godwin. He hasn't played great, but I think it's at least in him to play great. And this kind of dead spot here at home against the Falcons, I think makes sense.
I mean, a name that I really haven't mentioned this year, and I probably should have at least once, considering that he has played Atlanta. What do we play against Atlanta? We play running backs against them. Peyton Barber in their first matchup in Atlanta, 20.6 DraftKings points. His price is still at 3,600, where it's pretty much been static the entire season. Jameis Winston, the first time that these two teams matched up, 30 for 41 with 395 and 4 passing touchdowns. I think Godwin's in play. I think Barber's in play. I think that Jameis is also in play this game.
Let me give a quick note here, Peter, before you go. And I don't know how verified this is, but there is rumors and speculation out of Tampa that Ryan Griffin, the backup or third stringer, I guess, to Jameis, they want to see him. I don't know if that means he's going to play in this game or not, but there's at least those rumors. So it's at least a concern for Jameis that those whispers are out there that they want to get a look at Ryan Griffin.
I mean, that's going to be the minefield the entire week, which is why I think that going with playoff teams who are in the hunt for something, and a lot of them are in the hunt for either home field in the wild card round, or teams like the Chiefs who are playing for home field, or if they lose, they could fall out of the buys. They could fall into the wild card round. You know that these teams are going to have to play for something. So I think paying for those things, because there will be enough value on the slate, is probably going to be prioritized in cash this week. In tournaments, right. Yes, you can take risks in tournaments with guys like Jameis and stuff like that.
Just to piggyback on that, Al, just an overall slate advice. You have most of the teams that have the biggest incentives at 425 Eastern. Make sure you're leveraging late swap. There are a couple really good plays in these early games, but the majority of them are at 425, and I agree with you completely, Al. The safest route is to take guys have incentive to be out there and should play the whole game. Pertaining to the Falcons and Buccaneers, there's one guy I like, and it's Godwin. I'm with you, Adam. I've been playing him a ton this year. Super talented dude. And have to give a shout out to Matt Ryan, who came through big in week 16, which was awesome. Let's go to the Cowboys at Giants. What are the news and notes here, Adam?
Yeah, so this is where it starts to get interesting. Although Dallas is locked into the number 4 seed, no matter what happens on Sunday, they will be the NFC's number 4 seed. Jerry Jones, Jason Garrett are claiming that they'll be playing their starters. They also claimed the same thing in 2016 when they were locked into the number 1 seed. And then in week 17, they went out and Zeke didn't play. Dak played 2 series. Dez only played 18 snaps. Then in the divisional round, they went out and lost. So now they're saying, hey, we learned our lesson. We're going to play our guys. Nobody believes them, right? Like the line, I think, is Giants -6, which is obviously an absurd line if Dallas was playing their starters. So I don't know, man. I think that Dak and Zeke maybe and Amari start, but I'd be pretty surprised if they finish this game. I think we'll see a lot of Cooper Rush, Rod Smith, Darius Jackson, et cetera, et cetera. So play Cowboys at your own peril. I don't think that I will be playing Cowboys at all. From an injury perspective, Odell Beckham mispracticed again on Thursday. Would be pretty surprising to see him out there for a meaningless finale for the Giants due to his quad injury. And I mean, the thing for me, Al, is like, whereas Saquon Barkley was just a stone lock for Rookie of the Year like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, now everybody says that Baker Mayfield should be the Rookie of the Year. And if the Giants want to prove that using the number 2 pick on Saquon made sense, he better at least be the Rookie of the Year. So I think they'll be motivated to get Saquon a good game here. And if he's playing against a lot of Dallas's backups, that certainly helps the case for Saquon. I believe he's 8,200.
Mm-hmm. So you're going with the get Saquon the hardware narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of narratives in week 17. So the get Saquon the hardware narrative, I guess, is as solid as any other. My question is, if ODB is out, are we going with Evan Ingram here at 5,300, who a couple games ago had a really good game? And we saw this all last season, right? That when Odell Beckham was out, Evan Ingram really saw a massive uptick in routes run, in targets, in everything else. And then last week, he was not going to be featured. It was Red Ellison who was getting a couple of targets early. When Ellison went down, then Evan Ingram started getting peppered with targets. So Ellison's listed as questionable, ruled. He's not ruled anything. Sorry. So we'll find out as the week goes on if he's out. If Ellison's out, I absolutely love Ingram at 5,300 for some of the reasons that you mentioned. But I love the results over process thinking by the Cowboys here. What if they had won that game in the first round in 2016? Would they then say, oh, we're totally sitting our guys out because it worked last time?
They're not very sharp.
No.
Yeah. Stupidest thing ever to try to get your guys out there. Take the bye, rest your players, sit Amari, sit Zeke, sit Zach. Agree with you on Ingram. The only other play that I think is interesting in this game is Sterling Shepard. We've seen some pretty good games with Odell Beckham out. Obviously, he's much better in the slot. If the Cowboys end up sitting players on defense, I certainly think that helps a lot of these Giants players as well. But again, these are thinner plays to me than some of the other options we have. Mm-hmm. Adam, any final thoughts here?
Saquon Rookie of the Year. Go get it, kid. Penn State zone.
Okay.
We could roster an all Penn State lineup this week. Godwin, Saquon, Deshaun Hamilton, just Penn State.
Now you're talking. Last week, the all-CSU team would have done pretty well at the receiver position. Higgins and Gallup got into the end zone. All right, Panthers at Saints. This is another spot where we should see the Saints sit all their guys, given that they have nothing to play for, Adam.
Yeah, almost certain that the Saints will. Sean Payton talked last time they were in this situation about how much he regretted playing some guys. Like they had like a slight chance to win the division. I believe it was like 3 or 4 years ago. And they decided to play other guys, and a bunch of their guys got hurt. And he talked about how much he regretted it. You can go to my Twitter, or there was an article on ESPN about it. So I think it's very likely that we will see very little or none of Breeze, Kamara, Ingram, Michael Thomas. I think we'll see Teddy Bridgewater. I think we'll see Dwayne Washington, who is stone minimum, be the workhorse back. I think we'll see Traquan, who kind of fell behind Ted Ginn last week. I think we'll see Tommy Lee Lewis. I think we'll see Austin Carr. Obviously, projecting these guys is really hard because we don't know how well Teddy will play. We don't know how good these guys are. And also we don't know how hard Carolina is going to play, because on the other side of the ball, not only is Cam Newton out, but now Taylor Heineke, and I talked about this on the solo pod, but dude fought through basically like a broken arm or something to come back in and finish out the game, but he's going to be out. So it'll be Kyle Allen against Teddy Bridgewater most likely. And there's also whispers that they're going to rest Christian McCaffrey in this game too. We'll see on that. So, Al, this is like a preseason player's dream because everybody is going to be a second or third stringer. The problem is I like to use my preseason players when they're surrounded by first stringers. When it's all second and third stringers out there, like it could get really ugly. And I think that's reflected in the total in this game, which I believe is like 43 or 44.
I mean, that's what we saw last year in week 17 for the Chiefs when Patrick Mahomes was basically playing with a JV squad against the Broncos in week 17 of last year. And it's like, well, he didn't do that. And the offseason there was, well, look, we already have game film on, and he didn't do that great in week 17. Yeah, but he was playing with the JV team against a varsity team. It was a different story. Same situation here. Like you're saying, it's greater when these guys are forced into, if Traquan Smith is out there with Drew Brees, as opposed to Traquan Smith being out there with Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater, a good quarterback, but not quite a Hall of Fame quarterback like Drew Brees in that offense. My question is Christian McCaffrey. There's a narrative for you that I wanted to really sink my teeth into coming into this week with him being, 155 receiving yards away from the Roger Craig, 1,000 yards receiving, 1,000 yards rushing, CMC 2K possibly in this game. But if they rest him, no chance at that 155 yards receiving. If Samuel's out there, then I think that the shorter targets have been going towards him. 4,200, at least you should have a high target floor with big play upside, and maybe getting a little bit more of the target percentage if CMC is out with his massive target percentage that he carries along with him.
Yeah, this is a game you just have to pay attention to the news up until lock. I think we'll get a lot of information from these teams, hopefully on Friday and Saturday, and if not, we should get more information on Sunday. Christian McCaffrey, obviously intriguing if he's a full go, but if they're going to rest him at all, it makes him really tough to click. Let's go to the Jets at Patriots. Patriots have big incentive here, Adam, and there's a couple plays on the Patriots I think are interesting. What are the news and notes?
I mean, big game for the Patriots. I mean, this is how they do it all the time. They just dominate the AFC East. They get the first round bye. They get the home games. And, then from there, it's like a coin flip to go to the Super Bowl or better. So they can clinch the number 2 seed and a bye with a win. If not, the Texans could get in. So, yeah, everybody has a full go on New England. Obviously, no Josh Gordon, but Julian Edelman has one of the best possible matchups against Buster Screen in the slot. Sony Michel, I think we talked about it last week on the 3-man. I mean, they are using Sony Michel in the Blunt role, but he's so much a better player. He actually has the 100-yard bonus upside, and he obviously has the same TD equity that Blunt used to have. And I think Tom Brady is in play too. We obviously saw what Aaron Rodgers was able to do to this Jets defense last week. Brady's been struggling so badly, but this could certainly be a get well spot. So yeah, I think those are interesting. And then the Jets, if you played like 3 or 4 Jets, I know Al was talking about if you played 3, 4, or 5 Jets last week, you likely did well. It's going to be the same situation this week. Likely no Enunwa, likely no Curse, and you have Robbie, you have Chris Herndon, you have Eli McGuire all in play. The problem is they were home against the Packers. That's a lot different than into Foxborough. Yeah, I think we talked about that last week in regards to Josh Allen.
Yeah, the 5-Jet onslaught last week would have done well in GPPs, including the defense, right? With Darnold and McGuire and Anderson and Herndon and the Jets D. This week, I'm still on Herndon. I'm not as much on Anderson. I think the price hike for the targets and against New England on the road, a bad matchup with Gilmore there for Anderson. Not really something that I want to go after as much. But Herndon with a 20-yard or more catch in 6 of his last 7 games. You're getting a high target floor, 20% of the targets last week, going up from 8% 3 weeks ago. So now you've got a really high target floor for a 3.4K tight end, if that's the way that you want to go. I would assume that he's more of a turnip play. I think that the premium tight ends are going to be kind of more chalky this week than most weeks because of the value that exists at running back and wide receiver, because it is week 17, so you can afford to get those high floor guys. But if you want to go with 2 tight ends or you want to go with a cheap tight end, I think that Herndon is probably the best play with his higher target floor plus big play upside, which you don't see very much from a tight end.
Yeah, I love the Herndon call. Also a huge fan of Elijah McGuire. He was absolutely clutch last week. I think he's still a good play given his role in the passing game. The Jets get down in a big way, which the line suggests they will. he could have a ton of garbage time catches, which makes his floor relatively high. My favorite play in this game, Adam already hit on. Julian Edelman has an amazing matchup in the slot. And with Gordon out, Hogan basically being, one or two target type guy, he's going to just get peppered with targets, and the Patriots need to win this game. So I'm super high on Edelman. And I think Michelle makes sense. Maybe James White as a GPP play. Adam, any final thoughts before we move to the next game?
Yeah, I mean, 7,600 is not typically what I pay or am willing to pay for someone with Julian Edelman's role. Like, he literally needs like 12 targets to get to 100 yards, and that's tough to swallow.
He should get that, right?
But he might get that, right? So It's tough. Yeah, I mean, 7,600, I think at best you could say is appropriately priced on Edelman.
I don't think Edelman's ever had the touchdown role that he's had this year as well. You've seen way more end zone targets, way more red zone targets than he typically gets. He was a 20-20 guy that they'd only use within there. And so like needing that 10 to 12 targets was something that you needed to get the 7-8 catches and the yardage that you needed, but there was never really any touchdown expectation or upside. Now I think that comes along with a little bit more along the lines of what Jarvis Landry was last year for Miami, when for so long Jarvis Landry was a guy that would get peppered with low ADOT targets. You'd need to get 8 catches for 90 yards, and there was never a touchdown expectation. Then last year that all changed. I think that's changed for Julian Edelman in 2018. So at least there's more touchdown upside there. I don't think you need the 12 targets as much as you did before.
Yeah, I totally agree, Al. I think Gronkowski just completely falling off a cliff from an athleticism standpoint with all the injuries has really helped Edelman. And yeah, he's not going to bust these huge plays that we normally want when we're paying that much for a receiver, but it's a perfect DraftKings spot. I mean, if he gets 12, 13 short targets and he gets 10 catches, 100 yards and a touchdown, you're looking at a massive game. So I really like Edelman, and I think the running backs are also intriguing. Also, the Patriots defense, I mean, Darnold has been a turnover machine his whole career in college and obviously this year as well. So I think the Pats D with Michelle could make a lot of sense as well. All right, let's go to the Jaguars at Texans. Brutal injury for DT contract year. Obviously, I always want to point out the Achilles ruptures, but knew it right away. When I saw it, just sucks given how well the Texans are playing. But that opens up opportunity in the passing game for the Texans here, Adam.
Yeah, so the Texans are highly motivated here. They're currently number 3 seed. They could get the number 2 seed with a win and a New England loss. But regardless, I mean, they need to win, because if they lose, they're going to be the 6th seed because they're going to lose the division to the Titans or the Colts, whoever wins that game on Sunday night. So Houston is highly motivated. The problem, of course, is a Jaguars defense, which is capable of being dominant. I don't know if they will be, because they've been so much more hit or miss this year. But it's certainly not a good matchup, right? Like, even though the Jacksonville defense has struggled, it's not a good matchup. Nobody could say that. Price is adjusted on DeAndre Hopkins. I believe he's down to like 8K or 8,100, which is very cheap for him. From an injury perspective, Lenny Fournette hurt yet again. So would be surprised if he wasn't limited or out of this game too. But yeah, I think the plays are mostly or all on the Houston side here, and it really comes down to what you think about this Jacksonville defense, Al. Like, do you think they're still dominant? Do you think they'll be playing hard? Do you think Jalen Ramsey can handle DeAndre Hopkins, et cetera, et cetera?
I think I don't want to play anybody from this game is really what I think. I think that with 15 games out there and so many better offensive expectations and players in great spots at low salaries and at high salaries, that why am I playing around with this game in anything other than a GPP? If Hopkins plays, D.D. Westbrook has seen some elevated targets, but really, can we expect D.D. Westbrook to have a 30-point game? I think he's GPP only. There isn't really much that I want to attack here.
Yeah, GPP game, but I do like Watson and the pass catchers a little bit. Hopkins, obviously a great talent. We'll see on the Jaguars defense, but Watson to me has been unreal. I mean, I saw a stat. In college and the NFL, he's had all his games within 1 score that he's lost. I mean, just ridiculous how good he's been, and should be fun going into the playoffs. The Texans will be a very relevant team once we get into those DFS slates. Let's keep it moving since we have 15 games. We'll go to the Lions at Packers, and probably my favorite narrative on the whole slate is the records that Davante Adams needs, Adam.
Yeah.
That was Adams to Adam.
Davante Adams only needs 2 targets, 2 catches, I believe, to set the single season reception mark for the Packers, and he only needs 100 and something yards, maybe
133 to tie, 134 to break.
Yeah, 134 to break.
134 to break the record set by Jordy Nelson for the most receiving yards by a Packer in franchise history. The interesting part of this is Randall Cobb, very questionable with a concussion. Equanimous St. Brown left in the 4th quarter with a head injury of his own last week. he's very, very questionable. So I think the 3 wide receiver set is going to be Devontae Adams, obviously going to get, I projected him in my article today for the most targets on the slate. Then Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who will play the slot. And then Jake Kumaro, who is this like Jeff Janis type, small school, big guy, 6'4", plays outside, has been making huge plays. I mean, I know Peter remembers from the preseason, Kumaro broke a couple slates in the preseason. He's stone minimum. So this is kind of the spot where I would be more likely to consider one of these preseason guys. He has Aaron Rodgers. He has Devontae Adams on the other side. Jake Kumaro has shown an ability to make big plays, and he's stone minimum. The other news here on the Packers side, which I think people are on now, and I kind of regret not being on it more last week because I knew it would happen, but Jamal Williams playing literally 100% of the snaps for the Packers. It's just hard to fail when you have a pass game role like Jamal Williams does, and you're playing 100% of the snaps, and you have a goal line role. So Jamal Williams' price only went up to, I believe, $6K. I think he's going to end up being one of the higher owned guys on the slate out.
I mean, it is a tough matchup, or at least a tougher matchup than it's been throughout the entire season. But when you're playing all of the snaps and involved in the passing game, your floor is absolutely massive. The one narrative that you missed with Devontae Adams, he is 6 touchdowns away from both the Packers single season receiving touchdown record and the NFL single game touchdown record. So if he can get that one on top of the 134 yards and 2 catches, that would be awesome.
That would be.
That'd be a decent game. 6 touchdowns, 134 yards.
Yeah, break a couple of records while you're at it.
Yeah, sounds nice.
I mean, that's pretty much Adam nailed everything from this game. There's literally nothing left for me to talk about.
Let me give a couple injury notes on the other side.
I got some takes. I was just waiting.
All right, I was going to say, I got nothing else. It's like
what are you waiting for? If you got the takes, what are you waiting for?
Give the takes.
All right, I got a couple more takes. I think MVS playing in the slot is an underrated play right now. Really, really talented player. He's obviously been very volatile, but in tournaments, I think a double stack with Rodgers, Adams, MVS, or you could throw in Jamal Williams and then running it back with Golladay, who is the only player you can even look to on the Lions. Their offense has been pathetic. I think Matthew Stafford's been a lot more hurt than people realize, but Golladay is still such a talented player, and we saw what the Jets were able to do against this Packers defense. So some sneaky game stacks here, and then the Packers defense is certainly in play as well. The Lions are just absolutely pathetic on offense. So that's where else I'm looking. Adam, you wanted to get in there with a couple more takes?
Yeah, and related to what you said, Matthew Stafford, I think, has been playing hurt also, but for the first time in a while, he is practicing in full with his back injury, so that's notable. And Kenny Golladay continues to deal with his chest issue. I'm not sure exactly what's wrong, but he's been playing through it, and I would expect him to continue to play through it.
And he's just a straight baller. All right, we're getting into the 425 games. One other comment on the whole week. Great opportunity to play 1 p.m. only. And this is the best 425 or 4 p.m. only slate that you will see all year. Have a ton of games. All these games have some implication. So it's a really, really nice afternoon slate. We start with probably the least enticing game, or one of the most least enticing games. Eagles at Redskins. What are the news and notes here, Adam?
Yeah, Eagles are still alive. I mean, if they beat the Redskins and the Vikings lose to the Bears, then the Eagles are in. So they're still alive. Washington is officially dead as of last week. And that's always a bit scary, right? Because unlike teams like the Falcons or, I don't know, some of these other teams that have been dead all year, like after the team is dead, the first week after is always scary. So we'll see how they play it. Josh Johnson, again, I think Josh Johnson is more capable than people realize. I thought he actually performed reasonably well in difficult spots the last 2 weeks against the Jaguars and the Titans. Jamison Crowder has emerged as his favorite target. I wish Crowder was a little bit cheaper. And then, of course, BDN, Nick Foles starting yet again. Nick Foles broke the slate last week at 4,700. I believe he's up to I don't even have it here. I think he's like 65 or 66 this week going on the road to Washington. I'm not completely against it because I think Washington's defense is ready to let down. DJ Swearinger's situation, obviously, he's gone now. But yeah, I mean, it's tough for me to pull the trigger back on Nick Foles after I wasn't on him when he broke the slate last week. And then, of course, Al, I think there's always going to be the decision like there is every week between Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle at the top of the tight end. I
mean, and I would prioritize Ertz third in that group. Honestly, to me, it goes Kelsey, then Kittle.
How dare you say anything negative about my boy, Zach Ertz?
And that's the thing. Like, that's not anything negative about Ertz. That's so hyper positive about Kelce against the Raiders in a spot where the Chiefs have to win and the Raiders can't stop anybody, and Kittle, who they're probably just going to be pumping with targets to try and get him more receiving yards than Kelce to try and break Rob Gronkowski's tight end receiving yards record, and Kelce's already ahead of him and in a spot where they're going to be peppering him with targets just out of necessity, that Kittle and him, to me, look far and away the top tight ends. That takes nothing away from Zach Ertz. I'm just prioritizing the other two. I can't have all three. I mean, I can uncheck the box that allows me to play a tight end in the flex. But if I only had two, I'm going with those other two. Are you prioritizing Ertz ahead, or is that just personal bias?
Wait, you can't play three. You can only play two. How are you going to play three?
I said two.
With DraftKings. He has a little.
I said I can play two.
You said three. You said you could play three if you uncheck the box.
No, I said I can play two if I uncheck the box. So I'm playing those two. I'm prioritizing those two out of the three between Ertz and Kittle and Kelce.
I know what you meant. I was just busting your balls, but you did say you could play three. People are going to think that you have a box on DraftKings. You can click and you can play three tight ends.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
Al does have a box where
you're not supposed to tell them.
All right. I love Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz came through in the biggest way last week. Had Ertz everywhere across the industry, and my goodness, what a performance by Zach Ertz. And I can't say anything negative. He's my number one tight end every week going forward. I just love
forever in perpetuity.
Forever in perpetuity. Zach Ertz, even when he's 50 years old, he will be my number one tight end. But it's still a great matchup here. I mean, the Redskins, like Adam said, I think are going to be giving up. The Eagles have to win. We've seen Nick Foles target him in the red zone. I just think all these tight ends are fantastic plays, and Ertz is certainly the guy you want to look to. Alshon Jeffrey had a little bit of a disappointing game last week, did have one really big catch, but he's getting more and more involved with Nick Foles at quarterback, so I think he's another option that we can look to. Outside of that, I mean, Nelson Aguilar had that one lucky touchdown, Adam, but to me, I think that the main play here is Zach Ertz. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, and I think Eagles defense is going to be in play too. I mean, their defensive line has a chance to overwhelm Josh Johnson, I think.
Okay, let's move to the Chargers at Broncos. Broncos need to lose this game. We need Vance Joseph completely out of the picture for this franchise. Chargers have a lot of motivation here, though, Adam.
Yeah, they do, right? So they're going to be the number 5 seed unless Kansas City loses at home to Oakland, right? So the players, the coaches could be looking like, man, what are the chances that the Chiefs lose at home to Oakland? And let's say they go into halftime and the Chiefs are up like 28-0 or 28-3, which could certainly be happening. Do they scale back? So I think there's a smidge of risk, a small percentage of risk with Chargers guys, not full on risk. So it's interesting, from an injury perspective, Austin Eckler is back healthy, practicing in full. Keenan Allen played last week, looked fine to me, healthy, practicing full. Melvin Gordon is obviously 8,400 in this spot, certainly a good play if he plays all the snaps. We know that Justin Jackson can play. We know that Austin Eckler can play too. And we know that the Chargers might be looking to a road wildcard game next week. So I don't know if they keep the gas pedal fully down on Melvin Gordon if the Chiefs are winning. We'll see. I really don't know. On the other side of the ball, Phillip Lindsay is going to be out for this game. Locks in Royce Freeman to a majority of the early down work. Royce Freeman has been a total 0 in the pass game, which scares me, but he's only 3,500, so I guess he's in play, but we'll see Devontae Booker get a share of the early down work plus the pass down work.
And Deshaun Hamilton's still only 5K in spite of being one of the highest floor players, and his skill set gives him a high ceiling, just the way he's being utilized. He hasn't topped 50 yards receiving in the 3 weeks since taking over for Emmanuel Sanders in the slot. But in those 3 weeks, he has had no less than 6 catches, 7 in 2 of the games, and a total of 30 targets in 3 weeks. That's exactly what you're looking for if you need a salary saver. I don't think you need to start your lineups with him, but if you have 5K left at wide receiver, I don't think that you can go a better route than just going with Deshaun Hamilton as a last man or second to last man in. If you've just got that amount of salary remaining at that price range, I don't see anybody I like better.
Yeah, I like that call. Cortland Sutton had his 47th touchdown called back last week. Did get a real touchdown, actually
it's
scored.
An NFL record.
NFL record. Cortland Sutton, another option that you have. We'll see. He should see a lot of Casey Hayward, which is obviously scary. I think the Hamilton call is definitely a higher floor play. Royce Freeman has a lot of touchdown equity for that price, but like Adam said, the lack of passing game role is certainly scary. Booker could be intriguing as well if you think the Chargers are going to get out to a big lead here. On the Chargers side of the ball, Keenan Allen, I think, makes a lot of sense given that the Broncos secondary is just completely depleted. Chris Harris out for the season, one of the best corners in the league. And I think the splits that you've seen with Keenan Allen against the Broncos, you can just throw them out the window, given the secondary is just totally different than it's been the last couple of years. So he's someone in tournaments that I think is interesting. Adam, any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Keenan Allen is like the poster boy for guys that are overpriced for how they're used. You know, Keenan Allen is like 70th in the league in average depth of target and like 100th in yak or something like that. You know, so like he literally needs, like similar to Edelman, he literally needs a touchdown or 12, 13, 14 targets to like really smash. We've seen him get that. We've seen him get 15, 16 targets in a game, and he just
remember that game versus Pittsburgh?
Yeah, exactly. So like it's certainly possible. I'm just not sure Denver's capable of forcing Phillip Rivers to throw it to Keenan Allen 15 times in this game. So I don't know, man.
The concern would be halftime. They see the Chiefs are winning by a ton, but this Broncos secondary is absolutely trash now. Yeah. All right, let's go to the Raiders at Chiefs. Everyone's going to be looking to Chiefs players in this spot. They need to win for the bye. The Raiders are terrible, and the Chiefs have been the most potent offense all year. Adam, what are the news and notes, and how many Chiefs is too many Chiefs?
Yeah, I expect the Chiefs to be extremely popular. Obviously, they need to win this game to secure the number 1 seed in the AFC, get the bye. I mean, if they lose, as Al mentioned, they go all the way down to the number 5 seed, assuming the Chargers win. So big spot for the Chiefs. And I mean, DraftKings, like, Patrick Mahomes' price is not adjusted for motivation and matchup. Like, Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback most affected, or one of the quarterbacks most affected by pressure in terms of splits, and Oakland is the worst team in the entire league at putting pressure on a quarterback. It's just a dream spot for Mahomes. The thing is, like, a lot of people were probably banging on playing Damian Williams, who's played great. I'm not sure how they're going to play it. Spencer Ware is back practicing full. I don't know if they are going to say, hey, Damian Williams has played great, we're going to stick with him as the lead guy, or they're going to say, Spencer Ware has been a reliable guy for us, we're going to split the work between Damian Williams and Spencer Ware. That's, to me, one of the biggest situations to watch, because if Damian Williams was going to get the kind of work he's been getting the last couple of weeks at 6,100, he's a really, really strong play. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is overpriced at 8,400 relative to his targets, but his targets in this matchup are so valuable.
Are you really going to say that on this podcast?
He's 8,400 for 8 targets.
Did you really just say that?
Peter, if you played Tyreek Hill like every week for the last 8 weeks, you may have won once. Maybe you have won once, maybe twice.
You definitely won in week 11. Okay. You definitely won in week 10.
Do you really want to go
you
down
did fine in week
Hill?
14 when he had 25 points, the lowest of those 3 weeks. And the other weeks were famine.
The last 5 weeks?
The last 5 weeks, you'd have been 2-2-1.
But you will have spent like $9,000 for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but one of those weeks he had 25, one he had 46.5, and the others were 2 under 10 and one with 13.
At $9,000, if he has 25, it's not even good. That's what he's supposed to have.
Adam, aren't you the guy preaching?
The running backs that were $9,000 were putting up 14 and 15.
Al, I gotta go here. This is just.
I'm on your side on this one.
I know you are, but I'm on all-time tilt right now that Adam just said that. Adam, the guy who's been preaching, it's so important. Don't worry about median projections. You got to find the guys with the ceilings. How about a guy who went for 7 catches, 142 yards, 3 touchdowns already this year? How about a guy who went for 2 touchdowns back-to-back? One of the games he went for 215 freaking yards, Levitan. 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. Talk about winning real
Oakland
money.
Last time? What did he do against Oakland last time, though?
Oh, Oakland was not pretty.
Heel turn. I just hit Pete over the head with a steel chair. My God.
Yeah, all right. That's 2018. I'm seeing like 3 or 4 weeks, 5, 6 weeks where you just win all the money, Adam, which is what it's all about. 2017. Do you want to go through that stretch of time?
2017? What are you talking about?
We're going to the Wayback Machine. This is daily fantasy, Pete. This is not 3-year rolling average fantasy.
I'm just saying, if you roll Tyreek Hill every single week, you're doing well in the bank account. And Adam
Yeah.
just talked about how he's a bad play. Oh,
No,
the targets.
hold on. In no way did I say he's a bad play.
The targets.
I actually think this week he's actually a better player than he's been in a long time. I mean, this Raiders secondary just has absolutely no prayer of keeping up with him. Sammy Watkins is out. They're highly motivated. Like, Tyreek is an awesome, awesome play this week. All I said is that relative to guys like Devontae Adams and Juju and Antonio Brown, he's going to see like 4 or 5 less targets. But I agree, it's fine. His targets are incredibly more valuable. The real take is Tyreek is an awesome play this week for sure. I think he should be priced something closer to like 7,800, but he's still an awesome play. I'm not going to worry about 600 when the ceiling is 40 points.
See, I think that the hand on the shoulder for Adam is some sort of tell, kind of like Teddy KGB with the Oreos, and I can't figure out what it is yet, but the hand right here on the shoulder means something, right? It's like it's Teddy KGB with the Oreo, and if he peels it or if he puts it back down, they mean 2 different things. So Adam's right hand on his chest definitely means something. To me, look, we're spending all this time arguing about Tyreek Hill at 8,400. Why are we not talking about Travis Kelce at 72? He's the play to me. Mm-hmm. He's going after an NFL record for his position. He's had a tremendous year, 10 touchdowns, 20 fantasy points a game. He's 7.2K. All these wide receivers are out there that are 8K and above that we're talking about that are putting up the same, similar, or less fantasy points per game than Travis Kelce. None of them have the touchdown upside that he has this week against an Oakland defense that is ill-equipped to even stop him from doing anything. Last time he played, 12 catches on 13 targets for 42.8 fantasy points on DraftKings. This is the one that I want to pair with Patrick Mahomes. Usually, we would have to stretch and find value at wide receiver or some running back that makes us uncomfortable. But now there's so much value out there that you can just get them and not even have to worry about it. I totally agree with Adam. Damian Williams, though, was somebody that I wanted to be on at the beginning of the week because Ware was possibly out. Now with Ware back, practicing in full, expected to play, this is very likely a timeshare situation. Could be 50-50, could be 60-40, as opposed to the other Williams on the slate for Green Bay, who should be 100-0. I think you have to go for the volume play.
The other narrative you guys haven't hit on, which makes all these guys even better plays, Patrick Mahomes needs to have a monster game for MVP, which I know the Chiefs want to get him. Coming off a loss against Seattle certainly hurt with the Saints having that big win against Pittsburgh. So Breeze versus Mahomes in the MVP race is very interesting. If Mahomes comes out here and has like a record game, which is very possible against this pathetic Oakland defense, we could see him get the MVP. Love the Kelce call. I think he'll beat Chalk. I think he makes a ton of sense. Ty Freak, of course, you have to get some exposure to Ty Freak. And Spencer Ware might be interesting in tournaments if we get news that he's going to be involved in the passing game as well. That's been his strength in the past. They've brought him in even when they had Kareem Hunt as a third down back. So he's a tournament play. And if we get news that Damian Williams is going to get the same role, he becomes uber Chalk to me as well. So onslaught with the Chiefs. Anyone on the Raiders that we want to look to? I mean, I wish Jalen Richard was healthy. He could be a garbage time back, but he's dealing with an injury. Jared Cook's dealing with an injury, Adam. Is there anything that we can look to on Oakland, given that Kansas City should be up big and we could see some garbage time?
Yeah, I mean, normally when Oakland scores points, it's through Jared Cook. I don't know what the status of his health is right now, so I don't know, man. We'll see. I wouldn't be excited about doing it at all. You know, I don't think you absolutely have to bring it back. Like, they could win this game 40-10. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can we talk about how absurd it is that Patrick Mahomes in his first year as a starter is going to have 50 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards passing?
Yeah. He's really the man.
Yeah.
He's pretty good.
If there's any MVP voters out there who listen to this, and I highly doubt there are because they're all like age 60
I bet you
plus.
There's one. I bet you there's at least one.
Okay. You should have your vote removed if you vote for Breeze over Mahomes, and I'm not biased at all.
Yeah.
I like the throws where Mahomes
now
is moving to his left, and he literally detaches his shoulder from his body so that he can throw it back across his body 30, 40 yards downfield on a line and on target. Those are my favorite ones.
Yeah, he's the man.
Yeah, Adam, if you want to sell a little bit harder, I know you might have some Mahomes tickets over there.
I have no incentive whatsoever for Mahomes to win the MVP.
Okay, all right. Let's keep it moving here. We have the Bears at Vikings. This could be an awesome game. Obviously a huge spot and as much motivation as any game has on the slate, Adam.
Yeah, look, I question a bit the Bears' motivation. They're currently number 3 seed and they can't go any lower, right? The worst they're going to be is number 3 seed. The only way they get the number 2 seed is if the Rams lose at home to the 49ers. Certainly possible, right? 49ers continue to play hard, but 49ers absolutely depleted, which we'll talk about in a second from a skill position perspective. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's why the Vikings opened as a 6.5 point favorite, which I thought was just a weird line if the Bears are going all out. I believe the line's been bet down to 5 now. On the other side, Minnesota is very motivated. We already talked about the Eagles situation. Minnesota must win to clinch a playoff berth. If they lose, Eagles can get in. So Vikings guys are certainly in play. I think they're, no matter what the Bears do, the Vikings are going to struggle with their offensive line to open holes. I would prefer Thielen and Diggs in this spot. Other injury news in this game, Allen Robinson seems very, very questionable. But it's kind of similar to the Chargers situation, Al, where like if the Bears see that the Rams are up big at halftime, it's possible they scale it back.
I mean, yeah. That's the thing. Like, one, this is going to be a bully ball. This is going to be sluggo. This is, Norris division matchup, all those sorts of things. Where did Kyle Rudolph's 9 catches on 9 targets for 2 touchdowns come from?
Hail
He
Mary.
had like 9 catches and 2 touchdowns the entire season.
I know.
Going
Hail
into
Mary,
that game,
baby.
he literally doubled his fantasy output in one game.
Yeah.
That was very timely. Kyle Rudolph.
I know that worked out very well for Pete.
Yes.
I struggle to find anything that I want to play in a main lineup or a cash game lineup or a single entry tournament lineup from this game. Again, 15 game slate. There's so many great spots that we can choose from. This just doesn't seem like one to me. I think the defenses might be in play. I think that there's something you could do with Thielen or Diggs, but as leverage plays or as counter plays, but I don't see much here.
Yeah, I still think the motivation is very high. I understand what you're saying, Adam, but the Bears have to know the value of the buy. And yeah, maybe it's only 15, 20%, but I think they're going to come out and play. And I guess the risk would be at halftime. But the 49ers have fought really hard this year, and the Rams haven't exactly been firing on all cylinders. Last week they did play well, but before that, definitely struggling. So I think it's a highly motivated game. I'm excited to watch it, but from a fantasy perspective, I agree with Al. Not a ton of plays I love. In tournaments, don't mind Cohen, don't mind Thielen, don't mind Diggs, but better options that are higher equity plays on this slate. Let's go to the Browns at Ravens. Baker Mayfield trying to get Rookie of the Year, and the Ravens playing really good football now, Adam.
Yeah. Big game for the Ravens, obviously. They need to win this game to clinch the AFC North. If they lose, they're basically out of the playoffs because we do expect the Steelers to beat the Bengals at home. The thing is, it's not a pushover spot for the Ravens. I mean, Cleveland is playing like a legit playoff team right now, and they're calling this their playoff game. And I kind of believe them. I kind of believe like they're like, hey, our playoff game is spoiling the Ravens season. It seems to me the way that like Baker wants to do it. So it will not be easy for Baltimore, and obviously it won't be easy for the Browns to move the ball either. I think the only play that kind of stands out to me at all here is Lamar Jackson. It's just so hard for me to roster his running backs or his receivers because like the volume of pass attempts is so low. And on the other side, I don't love using guys going into Baltimore. So to me, Al, even though this game is highly motivated, should be a really good game. I don't see a lot of plays outside of Lamar. Yeah,
and I think Lamar's got a really good floor, but we haven't really seen his ceiling. In most of these games, 16 fantasy points, 17 fantasy points, 19, 17, 22. We haven't had him have a ceiling game yet because he just can't create touchdowns with his arm like a Deshaun or any other rushing quarterback. But his rushing floor remains outstanding. 6 straight games with 11 rush attempts or more. If he can bust a long one, which he does have the speed and agility to do, and has the short he's getting the carries around the 5 and the 10-yard line to get a short touchdown as well, and can connect on one long touchdown. We could see a ceiling game out of him. Will it come this week? I know it'll happen some point. He'll have a 30 fantasy point game. I don't know what week that's going to come is really essentially my problem. But from a floor perspective, I think that Lamar Jackson's as good as it gets this week. The problem is, do you need a floor quarterback?
Not with Patrick Mahomes on the slate.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But I do think Lamar Jackson's an interesting tournament play, like you said. Could get a rushing touchdown or 2, get the 100-yard rushing bonus, and you're looking at a monster game. Could hit John Brown on a deep bomb as well. Lamar Jackson
all the
been
tools
very
are there.
impressive. Yeah, I will say Cleveland's front is very athletic, and that does give me a little bit of concern. And then final thought here to the defense doesn't matter crew. Look what the Ravens just did against the Chargers on the road. The Buccaneers, who have been a good offense from a fantasy perspective and at least putting up points. Chiefs struggled, had to get there in overtime. Falcons on the road. I mean, this defense has been so good that, I'm not playing any of the Browns, even though I love what Baker Mayfield's done. Njoku finally had a good game last week. Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb. They've had a lot of options that have been really good and should be great for fantasy next year.
You're just not going to have that many opportunities on offense against the Ravens. That's really the issue. With them now going from like the pass happiest team in the league to the rush heaviest team in the league, they've essentially established the run on everybody, leading them to have so much time of possession, not unlike the DeMarco Murray Cowboys from a few years ago. You're just not getting the ball, and their defense is that tough that unless you're the Chiefs and can be efficient as all hell against the toughest defense in the league, you're not going to get very many opportunities on top of that.
Yeah, does that a team that's just running nonstop and playing the best defense, you know, no part of the opposing offense. Let's go to the 49ers at Rams. Big motivation for the Rams. They need this for the bye. Great spot. How many Rams is too many Rams, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Rams are all in to win this game. Does that mean they will get Todd Gurley back? I don't know. Seemed like he had a pretty good chance to play last week. Seemed like it was a true game time decision. Multiple reports from reliable reporters said he was going to give it a go. And then all of a sudden they were like, nope. He didn't feel good in warmups and he got scratched. If he gets scratched again, I would expect CJ Anderson to be one of the more popular plays on the slate. CJ Anderson is 5,400. Looked, I mean, incredibly fresh last week. And that was against a really bad Arizona rush defense, but I mean, still, it's kind of hard to ignore the way he played last week. I think one of the best matchups of the week goes to Robert Woods once again in the slot against Kwan Williams and this 49ers team, which has struggled so badly against slot wide receivers. Obviously, will avoid Richard Sherman. And on the other side of the ball, Al, I mean, it's depleted. You know, Matt Breida is not going to play. Dante Pettis is not going to play. I'd be shocked if Marquise Goodwin played. So we're going to see like Jeff Wilson playing almost every snap, Kendrick Bourne as number one wide receiver. And then as we have alluded to a couple times already, George Kittle is going for this record. He's well aware. Also, if you watched the game, I forget who it was against, where he almost set the record for tight end yards in a single game. Like Kyle Shanahan came up to him afterwards. He was like, man, I feel bad. I'm sorry we didn't get you that record. So we know they're aware of it. George Kittle said this week that they're aware of it. You can save 900 by going down from Kelsey to Kittle. Al, I don't know how much that 900 is worth on this slate yet. I haven't made any teams, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, here's the question. And I'm not asking for your cash game lineup, Adam. But targets wise, Devontae Adams versus George Kittle. I think Devontae Adams projects to have more targets than George Kittle, but I think it's a realistic possibility, maybe 25% of the time, that George Kittle gets more targets than the guy that all of us are projecting to have the most targets on the slate. That they just say, you know what? Nobody else is here. We got nothing to play for. Get him 20 targets and get him the record. Just make sure he gets more yardage than Kelsey today. He needs what? He's 40 yards behind Kelsey or something like that. He needs to top Kelsey's game, and then end up as the number one tight end of all time. There is a very distinct chance that they just force feed Kittle catches all day long.
That's our best chance to win, too, in a lot of regards. Yeah. I mean, he's by far their best pass catcher. On the other side of the ball, Jared Goff's home road splits have been absolutely obscene this year. Something to pay attention to. I do think Mahomes is the highest equity play, but Jared Goff is not a bad option, like stacking him with Robert Woods. Brandon Cooks could have a big game here. You have Reynolds, who's been playing better of late. So a lot of options. If Todd Gurley plays, obviously you can stack Goff and Gurley together and run it back with Kittle. So I do think that there's a lot of fantasy goodness here. It's just prioritizing, which Rams you want, which Chiefs you want, because they are expensive. Adam, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, on Josh Reynolds, we should note that last week, I don't know if this was a 1 week game plan thing, the Rams got away from their 11 personnel and played 2 tight ends on like 50+% of their snaps with Everett and Higbee. And so Josh Reynolds set like a season low, or a low since Cooper Kupp's been out for snaps. So I don't know. I'd be surprised if they did that again against San Francisco, but it's certainly possible. So I think Josh Reynolds' floor is maybe a little bit lower than it was last week. And last week, projected last week, I mean, we showed what his floor was last week. I think he only had like 2 catches.
I think that's
Robert Woods is very good.
Yeah, Robert Woods is very good. I think they specifically did that given the matchup against Arizona, knowing that they could run the football a lot and wanted to make sure that they obviously controlled the clock there. Let's go to the Bengals at Steelers. Great spot for the Steelers. Big motivation. The Bengals have just been a sieve on defense all year. Adam, what are the news and notes?
Yeah, Steelers don't control their own fate, but they're live. I mean, all they need to do is beat the Bengals at home and have the Ravens lose to the Browns. And we already talked about how well the Browns have been playing. So it's not crazy. Like, the Steelers are certainly live. From an injury perspective, they look very likely to get James Conner back. I think Jalen Samuels has played well enough that you can't just put Jalen Samuels on the bench for the whole game. So I think we'll see some kind of timeshare between James Conner and Jalen Samuels. Obviously, Jalen Samuels more on passing downs. That would scare me on those guys. But yeah, I mean, great spot, I think, for Ben, AB, Juju. We know the Bengals have kind of had AB's number to some degree over the last few years, but kind of busted out of it last week. They do have a new defensive coordinator this year, obviously. So yeah, I think with a team whose playbook is like all passing plays like the Steelers is, and it's really tightly concentrated with two wide receivers, they're always in play. And like we saw last week, I mean, you can find really huge games by playing Ben, Juju, and AB together.
What about Samuels? Or is Connor back 100%?
Yeah, I do expect Connor to be back, and I think we'll see some kind of timeshare.
Okay, fair enough. Now, it's nice that at 36 years old, Ben Roethlisberger has finally figured out how to play on the road, though, averaging more fantasy points in his road games than in his home games this year. But at home against Cincinnati with nothing on offense, for them to even move the ball, this looks like an absolute smash spot for Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. Or am I incorrect?
Mm-hmm.
Smash spot.
Yeah, but the problem is with the other wide receivers that we've already spoken about and the high-priced tight ends that we've already spoken about, I feel like, and both of them cannibalizing one another's percentage owned, because typically speaking, if you're going to play a Houston wide receiver, you're going to play Hopkins. If you're going to play a Chargers wide receiver, it's going to be Keenan Allen. If you're going to play Devontae Adams at 8,000, no other team has two wide receivers with this much 30-point plus upside cannibalizing one another's percentage owned on a week in, week out basis. So paying up to 8,700 for Antonio Brown to be contrarian sounds strange in a home spot against a defense that should not be able to stop him in a game that they want to try and win. Paying up to be contrarian to get the guy leading the league in touchdowns. This is insane to me. And yet here we are.
I think they're great plays. Just an opportunity cost thing, like you mentioned. Connor, to me, is really interesting, especially if we get word that he's going to get a lot of snaps and be totally fine. This Bengals defense, first running backs, has been so bad. The concern I have also with Big Ben and the receivers outside of the opportunity cost would be the Bengals struggling to put up points. We saw the Steelers obviously have an eruption game from a fantasy perspective versus Saints, and that's because the Saints are putting up so many points. Now they're at home. The Bengals have been struggling across the board. The Bengals are as beat up as any team in the NFL, Adam. That would be my biggest concern in stacking up all these guys. But it is a contrarian look. If the Bengals put up points, how do you expect it to happen?
Oh, they're not. I mean, they got down 26-3 to the Browns last week. I mean, it's impossible to put up points with Driscoll and CJ Azoma and Cody Core and Alex Erickson. Like, I don't even know how you would do it. And I think the Steelers defense will be more than ready for Joe Mixon.
Can we go back to Browns-Bengals just for 1 second? Just from a fantasy perspective, I know it's not on this week's slate. I know it's last week's slate. You mentioned the Browns put up 26 points against the Bengals. How many years are we going to have to carry this Baker Mayfield versus Hugh Jackson narrative going forward? Because I know next year I'm just starting Baker against a Hugh Jackson likely head coached Bengals team any chance I get.
Like, you think Hugh Jackson's really going to be the head coach? Oh my gosh. If they do that,
that's the rumor, is that they're going to move Marvin up to upstairs and they're going to put him as head coach. So, like, how many stare downs do we need from Baker before we just say, oh, they're playing the Bengals? Shoehorn him right into those lineups.
Oh, Baker's there.
If Hugh is the coach and the Bengals get healthy, I mean, talk about a freaking game that could just go off. I mean, the Bengals, if they get right with AJ Green, and I mean, hopefully Eifert can come back. He was looking really good. He's had so many injuries, but this team is very talented, and yeah, I guess this is not the time to, project out a 2019 matchup.
I want to set up the 2019 narrative early. It's week 17. It's cliffhanger week. We got to get them ready for next season and make them want to come back.
All right. I like that. We got a really exciting game to end the slate here, boys. Cardinals at Seahawks. There is one really good play, but Adam, this is not the same kind of fantasy goodness that we've talked about in a lot of these 425 games.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's motivation here is questionable. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're either going to be the number 5 or number 6 seed. Do they care whether they're the number 5 or number 6 seed? I'm not sure. So they say they're going to be going all out. It would surprise me, though, if some of their banged up guys, such as Doug Baldwin, Rashad Penny's been a bit banged up. We'll see how much they want to use Chris Carson because, I mean, he's their whole team right now. Do they really want to give Chris Carson 30 carries before they have to go on the road in the playoffs the next week? So I don't see a lot of motivation for the Seahawks here. If you want to talk narratives and old man, this is right up Al's alley. Old man Fitz could be his last game ever. I would rather, sleep. I don't even know what I'd rather do, but I'm not playing Fitz, but I'm sure a lot of people
enough to come up with something quick there.
You'd rather have Thanksgiving turkey.
I can't even come up with anything.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Fitz is probably going to get 8, 9, 10 targets. They're just like so low value. And yeah, I mean, it's his last game. I'm happy for him.
Fitz, last week was the week to narrative Fitz. The last home game ever.
Yeah.
Like that was the week to narrative Fitz.
And he hasn't even said he's retiring. He could still be back.
He could be.
Yeah.
What's stopping him?
Credit to him for not doing like the Kobe thing where it's like, hey guys, I'm going to retire and now I'm going to do a victory lap. Let me go all the way around, or like Dwayne, I'm going to go all the way around the league and get a standing ovation at every arena. It's all about me. I hope Fitz just goes out and he seems like a good dude. Like, hey, I'm retiring. I don't need all the adulation. So shout out to him.
He just sends a fax to the league. I'm out.
Exactly.
He's working on the golf game right now. That's what Fitzgerald's doing. Guy's the man. Al, any thoughts here?
I mean, I want to play running backs against Arizona. The problem is, Carson gets a ton of volume and has, the last 3 weeks, 22, 22, 27 carries. One of those games with 6 targets and 6 catches and the other 2 with donuts. But he's gotten so much volume. As Adam said, do you want to just keep running him into the ground before you go on the road for a playoff game? Are they going to sit him? Are they dress everybody? They've got so many different runnings between Penny and Davis and Carson that maybe they just say, you know what, we're going to play all you 33% of the time. You're each going to get 12 rushes, and then it's completely useless for us in fantasy. That's really the problem for me here. I want to play a running back against Arizona, but they're not letting me, and I don't like Pete Carroll because he chews his gum too hard and always lies to us. So I can't even trust if he says, yep, we're going to give Carson the ball just like he has the last few weeks. I can't even trust that. So I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I still think Carson's probably a good play. Even if he gets 12, 15 touches, he could score 2 touchdowns, and the Seahawks defense is definitely in play. That's it, though. I mean, these are tournament plays. You're not looking at Carson and cash, even though it's a phenomenal spot on paper for all the reasons you guys both mentioned. I want to shout out Tyler Lockett this year, who's also been ridiculous, one of the highest catch rates in the entire NFL on a very high ADOT. Really happy to see him come back and have such a good year after a horrific injury. So shout out to him. Adam, what are we doing for conviction plays / giving your lineup / whatever else you want to do here?
Yeah, no, I'm going to give a conviction play. Here's what you do. You go with the all Penn State team. Mike Gesicki at tight end, Deshaun Hamilton at wide receiver, Chris Godwin at wide receiver, Saquon Barkley at quarterback, at running back. I'm sure some real
Carter.
Kerry Collins. I'm sure there's some real Penn. I'm not a real Penn State meathead football fan. I'm sure there's some more Penn State players in the league right now. But yeah, that's what I would go with this week for my conviction play.
My conviction play is that Ty Freak is a good play. Adam is just a total donkey. But Adam, I know you want to talk about something else. And I'm calling you a donkey, even though you're embarrassing us all, or embarrassing me this year in the foreman.
I agree. Tyreek is a good play. I just wanted to mention that we did not talk about the listener league. They have hashtag made it smaller. It did not fill in week 15. It did not fill in week 16. It was close, but did not fill. So they made it 9K entries. It's still very, very good tournament. This probably will be the last listener league of the season. If you win this listener league, you will get an invite to the week 1 of the 2019 season 4-man. The way you get in is you find the landing page for this podcast on DK Playbook, and on there you will find the link. It is not difficult. Al, I'll send it over to you now for your conviction play. And from a programming note, still solo pods for the next couple weeks, still 3-mans for the next couple weeks. We'll let you guys know when we're going to shut it down, likely after the divisional round.
I mean, my conviction play will be a serious one. Just play Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. It's real simple. You can find the value somewhere else on the slate at running back and at wide receiver. Those two should theoretically go off in a game where they, 1, have to win, 2, have a ridiculously good matchup, and 3, Kelce is chasing a record. So that's the play for me. That's where I'm going to go. Thank you guys for tuning in for 17 straight weeks. Really appreciate it. We'll probably be here for 2 more throughout the playoffs, as Adam just said. So for producer Luke, for Jerry, for Adam, for Pete, I'm out. See you guys later. Bye, everybody.
We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.